What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Underdog Podcast. Today, I will be ranking the head coaching hires for the upcoming 2023 NFL season. We had 5 vacant head coaching positions in the NFL, and they have all been filled. I think as of last week, it was the last hire in Jonathan Gannon for the Cardinals. So I'll be going into these hires somewhat in depth, just giving my opinions on what I think about them, did they get the hire right, that sort of thing. So I will be ranking them from worst to best, starting with the worst and then ending with the best. So let's get into it here with our first, head coaching hire. The worst one, in my opinion, is Jonathan Gannon of the Arizona Cardinals. And listen, I don't think this is a horrible hire or even really a bad hire by any means. I just think they hired the wrong guy. Jonathan Gannon was the defensive coordinator for the Super Bowl runner-up Philadelphia Eagles, and I felt like he did a good job. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I didn't think he was a great or amazing one. Did a really good job with that Eagles defense, had all the pieces that he really needed to make that work. But I still think the Cardinals could have done a lot better. And let me explain. So I really think this franchise is at a tipping point. They do not have a good roster. This team might be the worst team in the NFL next year when you consider the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is likely gone from this team. There have been many reports that they are going to trade him. Kyler Murray is not going to be healthy for the start of the year. He might be ready by midseason, so you don't have your starting quarterback as well, and then your number one receiver is getting traded. J.J. Watt just retired, which was your only pass rush production on this team, really at all, besides Zach Allen, who's a free agent. Byron Murphy, your top player in the secondary, is a free agent, so you have a lot of turnover with this team. So Jonathan Gannon, for those of you who don't know, runs the Vic Fangio split safety defense. And it was under a lot of scrutiny this year because you had guys like Ed Donatel run it in Minnesota and Joe Woods run it in Cleveland, and it didn't work. And mainly it's because they didn't have the right pieces for that defense to run that defense. This defense was popularized by Vic Fangio back in 2018-19 with the Chicago Bears because he had an absolute just crazy defensive unit. It was when they had Khalil Mack, when they just brought him over from the then Oakland Raiders. You had Robert Quinn, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman. You had a young Roquan Smith. You had Kyle Fuller, Adrian Amos, Eddie Jackson, You had all the pieces you needed to run that defense, and that's what Jonathan Gannon had in Philly, with Hassan Reddick, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Darius Slay, TJ Edwards, Kazir White, the list goes on and on. You don't have those guys here in Arizona, to say the least. I really like Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins as your linebacker duo, although they have been both inconsistent, had up and down, careers this point for them. You have no pieces on the D-line as of right now. So that is a huge concern because a lot of this split safety defense is built on getting after the quarterback. And in the secondary, I like the fact that Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson are very good fits for this scheme, but you don't really have the guys on the perimeter. I thought Marco Wilson took a step up this year, but he's not exactly, a phenomenal corner by any means. And Byron Murphy, who's mainly a slot guy, is your best guy is a free agent. And I just think that this team, took Kyler Murray with the number 1 overall pick back in 2019, right after taking Josh Rosen in the first round, immediately moved off of him, hired Cliff Kingsbury as their guy, thinking that this air raid offense was a perfect fit for Kyler Murray, which it wasn't. They made the playoffs last year after being, the last undefeated team, and, they kind of tailed off quickly in the end of the year, and then Cliff was on the hot seat coming into the season after, the debacle they had in the playoffs, and they fall to 4-13. Kyler tears his ACL. I was at that game, and it was horrible, man. It was like the second play of the game, and I feel so bad for Kyler because I think that he is a very underrated player and has a lot, I think still has a lot to prove, still has a lot in the tank, but, I just felt like they needed a veteran offensive presence here to kind of ride the ship, steer the ship back into, in the right direction. I think that Sean Payton was somewhat of a long shot, but I think that he really liked Kyler Murray, and they would have been willing to give up the pieces needed to get him. I think the other options, Frank Reich could have been a really, really good hire here, and we'll talk about him later as he's the hire for the Carolina Panthers along with Sean Payton. And, I think even like Jim Caldwell, really veteran guy who's a senior assistant now with the Carolina Panthers, would have been an excellent hire here, I think, in my opinion. So it's not that I don't like Jonathan Gannon, because I do think that if, I don't know if he deserved any of these jobs over some of the other guys, but I do think he should be a head coach at some point. I just don't know if it should have been this year. But I'm interested to see if he can point this team in the right direction, get the pieces he needs on defense to run his scheme, and be able to, kind of put this team, back on track, as they have really, last year was really bad, and next year is not going to be great either. And they have a new GM, so it's kind of like hand in hand. They got the new coach, they got the new GM, so we'll see how quickly the Cardinals can get back to, where they were in a tough division, though. Not a tough conference, but a tough division. We move on to my next head coaching hire, number 4, if you will. And I have it as Sean Payton for the Denver Broncos. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, Sean Payton's 4th? What? It's hard to kind of knock Sean Payton because he's so successful. Super Bowl winning head coach, was, in New Orleans for a long time, and really, turned that team around from being one of the bottom feeder teams in the league. But you got to take all of it into context, right? Denver was supposed to be a Super Bowl contender last season, at minimum a playoff contender, and they were not good. Their offense was an absolute mess. Their defense was phenomenal, but their offense was just an absolute mess, and Nathaniel Hackett was not fit to be a head coach. So you bring in Sean Payton here, who's already making changes in the building. He says no personal coaches will be allowed, which I think is a great move personally. But Denver also had to give up a lot to get him. I mean, they had to give up a first-round pick. They had to give up more picks as well. So with everything in the context, it's a B-plus hire, because I think Sean Payton was going to be expensive, and boy, he was. And if this doesn't work, it's going to be painful for Broncos fans. And I think that Sean Payton has the tools to turn this around, get Russell Wilson back to that peak form, get all of these guys back. You're getting pieces back in the offense. You're getting Javonte Williams back. So you're getting your RB1 back. You're getting Tim Patrick back, who I thought was a pivotal loss at the beginning of the season for the Denver Broncos, and he turned out to be. And I think, this defense is already really good. They don't have their defensive coordinator spot filled because Ejiro Evero left for the Carolina Panthers, which I can't believe they just let him walk. But, whether it's Rex Ryan or one of the other guys coming in here, they're going to take care of the defense because they got some studs over there. I think Sean Payton really, we got to see this offense turn around, and they have the pieces to do it. It's just a question of whether or not they're going to be able to have that success here. And also, as good as Sean Payton is, as good as Russell Wilson was before last season, can they compete in this division? I think is the big question mark. Justin Herbert made the playoffs for the first time last year. Yeah, they blew it, but they made the playoffs and they looked pretty good. The Chiefs just won the Super Bowl, and the Raiders obviously aren't going to be like a big threat with them kind of getting rid of Derek Carr. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be. It could be Aaron Rodgers. It could be a rookie. It could be Jimmy Garoppolo. It could be somebody else. So can the Broncos not only compete in their division, can they even make the playoffs, in this tough division with Chargers and with Kansas City and the rest of the loaded AFC, conference? It's going to be tough, man. I think a lot of people are kind of setting expectations too high. This team, I still think needs a bit of work before they're going to be, that top tier echelon team in the AFC, because, you still got the Bengals, you still got the Bills, Chiefs, Jags are on the rise. I'm going to keep saying it. Jacksonville is on the rise. So, it'll be interesting to see where the Broncos land at the end of next season with Sean Payton and everything kind of seemingly in place for this team. We move on to my number 3 head coaching hire, my third highest ranked head coaching hire, if you will. It's Shane Steichen of the Indianapolis Colts, formerly the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. And listen, Steichen did a phenomenal job with Jalen Hurts. And I was so wrong about Jalen Hurts. I remember back in, after week 1, I said that he's going to play well enough for them to make playoffs, but they're going to move on from him. And that's not the case. He might be getting $50 million at the end of the season, which is crazy to me that we're going to live in a world where a year ago we didn't know if Jalen Hurts was a starting caliber quarterback, and now he's top 5 in some people's eyes, more so top 10 in my eyes. But, that's just an excellent job. And the Colts have been a revolving door of quarterbacks over the last couple of years. We know that. They're in position right now to take one of the top-level quarterbacks with the potential to trade up to number 1 if Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard and everybody agrees to it. I think that Steichen will instantly turn around this team. I mean, he's so good. And what he did with that Philadelphia Eagles offense, I think, was great. He used everybody to their max potential. I think finally, Miles Sanders got utilized, and he's going to get a big payday in free agency. I never thought I'd see the day. I think he put guys like Kenneth Gainwell, he put guys like, Zach Pascal, kind of the lower tier guys on that offense in positions to succeed. Obviously, A.J. Brown had a monster year with him. Devontae Smith had a really good year with them. And I think the way that he schemed up for that team, he just put that team in a position to win every week. I mean, even when they lost, they were, a great offensive team week in and week out. There wasn't really any question marks. And, obviously he's going to a place in Indianapolis where their offense is nowhere near the same talent as them. They have a really, really good running back in Jonathan Taylor, which I think he will lean on immediately, especially if they go the rookie, quarterback route, which I think is inevitable at this point. I think, Irsay's tired of bringing in veteran guys that aren't going to work out. So they have a stud running back in Jonathan Taylor that was hurt last season. They've got a potential wide receiver 1 in Michael Pittman Jr. We haven't seen that yet, but I think he's got the talent. Paris Campbell had a good year last year, but will they re-up him? It'll be interesting to see what Shane Steichen does with this offense, kind of the pieces he brings in and what that offense is going to look like next year. Obviously, first you got to figure out the quarterback position, what you're going to do there. But after that, I think I'm really excited to see what Shane Steichen can do and bring that, more inside zone type, run scheme to the Colts, which I think doesn't fit them right now. I think it will once Steichen kind of brings it in and, gets it worked out with this offensive line and with this team and everything. Because I think they have pieces there that can do it. There's, some of them obviously don't fit as well to that kind of scheme as others. Like I think Ryan Kelly isn't a great fit along with Quentin Nelson, but they could do it. I think it plays more to the strengths of Raymond and Matt Pryor than it does those two. And I think Jonathan Taylor does a good job of seeing, inside zone. So I think that could benefit him as well next year. Then we move on to number 2. And really these guys are more like 1A, 1B. There's very little difference between these two. But I went DeMeco Ryans for the Houston Texans here, A+ higher. I mean, come on, man. DeMeco Ryans was so good last season. That 49ers defense was crazy, man. And they rarely got their butts kicked. I mean, they did against Kansas City, and that was probably it. So he just put everybody in a position to win. He's going to come in there. He knows the Texans organization, played there forever, was a captain. Was a really good player, too. A lot of people forget about that, but this was a home run. This is as home run as you can get. I mean, besides the number 1 guy. But I really think that DeMeco Ryans is going to bring this tough, edgy, kind of like grit mentality that Houston really needed. They needed a fountain of youth in here, in this organization because they got a young team. And, they got some players on defense. And I'm so excited to see what he's going to do with Derek Stingley Jr., as he will no longer be just a flat corner. Thanks, Lovie Smith. But seriously, I think that he's going to put these guys in a position to win. They're not going to be good next season. They're probably not going to be good, depending on what they do, but probably not. They're still a couple years away. But I really think that this was the correct hire for the Houston Texans. I'm really excited to see what DeMeco Ryans can do with that defense. I'd almost love to see him go like Will Anderson at pick 2 and, then go with like, a quarterback at 12 because I think that D'Amico Ryans and Will Anderson would just be absurd. But, I think that the Texans, they, obviously, you kind of had the Deshaun Watson situation, everything unfold with that, and it kind of set them back more than they would have liked. And, the last 2 years they've been kind of figuring out what they want to do. They kind of gave Davis Mills an extra year this year. That didn't work out, so they're going to be looking for a new quarterback. They're going to be looking for, new pieces, because I think Brandon Cooks is going to want out. I think some of the other veterans are going to want out because they're going to want to play for a winning team. But D'Amico Ryans is going to get guys to buy in immediately. And don't be surprised if the Texans have like 5-6 wins at the end of the season next year, not like 3, 4, whatever. I think 5, 6, maybe even 7 wins. I think D'Amico Ryans really is a guy that gets the most out of people. He got the most out of that San Francisco defense last year, especially with, the talent he had up front, the talent he had at linebackers. And, he turned around. Like Charvarius Ward was awesome last season. Emmanuel Mosley was awesome last season. So he really kind of elevated some of those lower-level guys because of what he was doing, with the higher-level guys. He elevated everybody on that defense, and he's going to do that here in Houston. He's going to put his guys in position to succeed. And like I said, Derek Stingley Jr. will no longer be a flat corner. He's going to be in press man, and he's going to be all over you. And, the whole, Derek Stingley was a C-plus pick is not going to be a thing after next year. I can tell you that. He's got Jalen Petrie in the back end there. He's got Christian Harris. He's got Jonathan Grenard. He's got Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, Malik Collins. He's got some players there. They're not high level what he had at the 49ers, but he's got some players. So, don't be surprised if the Texans are not, I'm not going to say they're a playoff team because they won't be, but don't be surprised if they're, a better team than you expect next year. They're not going to be, a bottom 3 pick again. I think they're going to pick more towards 10 than, 1. It's just my opinion. And then we move on to what I deem, I guess, the best hire. I mean, like I said, it was 1A, 1B. It's Frank Reich to the Carolina Panthers. This is exactly what the Panthers needed. They needed a guy that was a veteran, guy in the NFL world, and that's what Frank Reich is. And I thought he was unjustly fired by the Colts. I did not think it was his fault. Matt Ryan was washed last season, and he was playing with Sam Ehlinger and Nick Foles. And Jonathan Taylor was hurt, and they didn't have any receivers, and their defense took a huge step back. So I don't really blame that on Frank Reich. He's coming in here to a great situation in Carolina. They have a defense, a really, really good defense. They bring in Ejiro Evero from the Broncos for nothing. And Steve Wilkes did a phenomenal job last year. He's going to the 49ers. But Ejiro Evero, what he did last year was just awesome. I mean, awesome. So you bring in Ejiro Evero, you bring in Jim Caldwell as a senior, assistant guy. Their staff is loaded. This team is not far away. Like I talked about in my mock draft 1.0. It's a quarterback and a draft class away from being an NFC contender. I mean, 7 wins is probably going to win you the NFC South next season. That division's going to be awful. Atlanta doesn't have a quarterback, and they're still trying to figure things out. I think the Saints are kind of your main competition because I think that they're better than people give them the credit for. And the Bucs are going to be terrible depending on who plays quarterback for them next season. If it's Kyle Trask, I'm betting against them, and they're a horrible coach team. So I really think that Frank Reich here is just a home run hire. If they get a quarterback, I hope it's Derek Carr, because if it's Derek Carr, then look out. This team's going to be very good next season. But, if they get a quarterback and they get the right pieces they need, I think they need a true bell cow running back, which is why I had them taking Bijan Robinson, instead of Deonta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard by, committee. I think they need a true bell cow, maybe another piece of the receiver position. I think their O-line is solid. Maybe if you could sign an interior guy, that would be good. I think their defense doesn't really need anything. Their defense is already just stacked. I think you need a quarterback and a draft class, and you're set for this Panthers team. And I think that you're going to see, I think you're going to see a bounce back here for DJ Moore. I think you're going to see Terrace Marshall live up to his full potential. Tommy Tremble, Laviska Shenault is finally going to be utilized. I think you're going to see a more explosive Panthers offense come 2023. So I'm really excited to see what Frank Reich can do here in Carolina. that is going to be all for my ranking the head coaching hires. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Did I get these grades right? Did I not get these grades right? I think that they're pretty fair in my opinion. I think the only one you can probably critique is the Sean Payton one. I gave it a little bit lower just because of the fact that, they had to give up a lot of picks for him, and it might not work out. So, but yeah, thanks for watching. We're going to have 2023 running backs for the NFL draft probably early next week. And then I'm going to do a video, I think, on the Chicago Bears and what they should do for the draft this upcoming year. But anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day and peace.